Everyone. Welcome to Epic Conversation. I think this is 11 or 12. Honestly, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm so happy today to have Miss Cordelia with me. Cordelia and I just went to Hawaii together. We've been on two trips together this year, actually,
That's right. Yeah.
Arizona and Hawaii. And we've had such a deep connection that has turned into a friendship outside of um, of all the jet setting that we've been doing. So thank you so much, Cordelia, for joining me today.
Thank you, Heather, for inviting me. Yeah, it's totally a joy to jet set with you too.
Yes, it's like our post-pandemic uh exploration of the world, right?
Yes.
Yay. So Cordelia is a font of wisdom and just this like portal, this like I've heard the word thresholder. I look at you as a thresholder of transformation, right?
Mm.
And we've had such wonderful talks that I'm excited to dig in to the wisdom, that we can mind meld together today. But first, I would love if you would share a bit about you as a person and the work you do in the world.
Oh, okay. So I'm uh, an author of 8 books, 4 solo, 4 collaborative. I'm a host of 2 podcasts. One has won an award, um, an international award, and I am a multi-award winner of was it Health and Wellness Coach of the Year and Entrepreneur of the Year and Top Influencer and stuff like that. And I'm a mom of 6
There it
beautiful
is.
individuals. Yes. So they are my teachers and my yeah, they're the ones who I do everything for. Yeah.
Mhm.
And of course, it's because, and that's what makes me the world's best joy monger.
Yes, so Cordelia has recently, I guess, added to your name.
Yeah.
You're still Cordelia, but you are also our joy monger. Will you tell us a little bit about how that came around, how that,
Yeah.
new
That's so
identity
funny.
came?
That's how we met kind of too, right? So Steve Hardison and I had a walk. Steve Hardison is what the book of being the ultimate coach is about. And I had some questions, so I had ahead of going to the ultimate experience in Arizona, asked him if he had a little bit of time for us to get together. And he was like, sure, take this 8 mile walk with me. And so during that 8 mile walk, because I'm an avid hiker, but walking on concrete is a totally different story. But
Different.
anyway, um, I mentioned to him that I'm working on a 6 month container, and each month had a theme. And so when I got to the month called Joymonger, he was like, "Ooh, what's that?" And I
Mm,
said, "That's what we're doing right now." I said, "You're joymongering, because he loves to connect with people and listen to their stories and stuff like that." And so he was like, "You know what, Cordelia? You're a joy monger. Your name isn't
mhm.
Cordelia, it's Joy, you know?" So
Yeah,
that's how that came about.
that's amazing. He's so wonderful at uh, s- inviting people to step into a new identity with ease just immediately, right? Like
Yeah.
master creator, like we're creating this right now, and now it just is. It's true, right?
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
gift.
He created me as Joymonger.
Yeah, well, you are for sure that for me. For sure, for sure. Um, before we get more into philosophy stuff, right? Inner work stuff, I would love to hear a little bit about your story, how you feel like you personally went, tra the actual events in your life that brought you to your inner work journey, right? Like what
Hmm.
happened, as you evolved as a person that led you to doing inner work.
Yeah, I can think of several things. I'm not going to give you my full life story, but we'll pick up um, at 2 months before September 11th. I chose to become Muslim.
Mhm.
And then, of course, at that time I was working in corporate America and everything. And I worked on the ninth floor. So after September 11th, probably like September 14th or something like that, I went to get on the elevator, and this one woman, she didn't want to get on the elevator with me because I have a blanket on my head, right?
Mm.
And so like everybody kind of stayed away from the elevator, and I got to ride by myself.
Yay!
And so
Yeah.
on the 9 floors up, what I was thinking about was, you know, interestingly enough, as I think back on that moment, I didn't really, I was mostly shocked, you know, but I was also grateful because I got to the elevator to myself. And then I was like, but what's going on there? Like,
Mm.
all these people are trapped and imprisoned in their fear.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
was wondering if there's a way that I could help them to alleviate that, you know?
Yeah.
And the only way I know to change people's hearts is from heart to heart. So I was thinking about compassion and how much compassion like must you have for yourself in order to have it for others. So that
Ah,
would be one freeze frame, right?
yeah.
I didn't really, I wouldn't say, with every interaction after that, I always made an effort like, this is who I am, this is who I've always been. It wasn't anything extra, I wasn't putting on a mask.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the same time, I made uh, the intention to connect with people. And if someone chose not to smile back, if I smiled and said good morning and they were like,
Mhm.
I would just, in my heart send them love. And I just decided, I said, okay, there are two types of people: the people that are willing and able to
Mm.
receive compassion, and the people who are just so miserable and that they can't be reached.
Mhm.
Fast forward to um, I stopped working in corporate America once I had my third child, and started homeschooling at that point. And I had a system going and everything was great. And so one of the things I did immediately was I took over the Mommy and Me program. They
Mm.
nominated me director of Mommy and Me right at my mosque. And so one of the workshops I did was to help moms to not be so overwhelmed and to self nurture, because
Yeah.
they used to ask me, how come you're always smiling, and don't you get flustered with all the kids? And so I would do these workshops ever so often, and they were like, can you just write a book about it? And I was like, oh, I don't have time for that.
Yeah,
Fast
yeah.
forward to my fifth child, and that's when I needed something to recalibrate. And that's when I started a blog. I started working for parenting magazines, and then eventually that became my first book. So my inner work always was self-nurturing so that I
Yeah.
can be fully present for my children, compassion, self-compassion so that I'd have some left over for others,
Mhm.
and then of course in the being present with my children, um, and homeschooling them, what that looked like was learning their various learning styles and
Mhm.
personalities so I can create individual curriculums.
Mhm. Wow,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the motherhood piece. I don't think I've really dug into the transformation of motherhood in these conversations yet, so I'm excited to do that here. Um, but I want to go back to your first event, where um, you got in the elevator, right? And so was the person who said, I don't want to, you have a blanket on your head, I don't want to get in. There were other people around and
There
they
were
kind
other
of
people
followed
around.
that person's lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. What an experience of groupthink, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, humans are incredible, right?
Yeah.
Humans are incredible. And I love how you turned that around um into what does the world need, right? I see
Yeah.
you as you are oriented to work to the world in a place of service, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really incredible. Is that I'm interested in how that came to be, like where that came from.
Mm, I guess, when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a diplomat. you know,
Mhm.
and I wanted to change the way countries get along
Mhm.
and the way people, well, I found, because my parents, we traveled a little bit when I was a kid, right? So
Yeah.
I noticed that people seemed to get along just fine. It was just their governments that had a problem communicating.
Yes.
So, I think that's really where it came from. And the other thing is I just loved learning different languages, which again makes it easy to communicate with each other, even if you're not fully fluent. And believe me, I am,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's where I would say it comes from.
Yeah, so just the experience of seeing that people are different, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
all mostly the same, right? But people, have differences, we could say, and can get along. Like
Yeah.
that's like I think that I bet there's people out there where that's missing. This understanding that like people can get along. And I think if we don't understand that, we're never gonna not just aim for it, but keep working until we get there, right? It's like we have to have a belief that it's possible that we can get along with people that are different than us.
Belief is like the key that unlocks all the doors. You have to believe that something is to create it as a reality,
Yeah.
and what you believe is your reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been talking about miracles a lot this year and defining what that means for myself. And it's when you make something that you believed was impossible come to life. Because that's all it matters is if you believed it was impossible, right? That's the only thing that makes you make it impossible because you believed it, right?
Yep.
And so the miracle is actually when you believe what was impossible is possible. That's the miracle. It's like it's inside of us, right? The potential for that. And
Yeah.
so I would love that miracle to spread, right? For people.
Yeah.
And so I see you, Miss Joymonger, right? That's when you told that story, I was like, she's spreading that miracle, right? That you are that.
Yeah.
You are being that people who are different can get along.
Yeah.
Imagine if the world had that.
Yeah. And I believe that through joy mongering, people can have that. The world can have
Yeah.
world peace, Like, I don't think it was just a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences, right? So my ex-husband's from Bangladesh, right? And when I was a little girl, I distinctly remember because we used to play with our globe, right? And so I would
Yeah.
spin it around. I'm like, I'm gonna marry a man from boom, and I put my finger on Bangladesh. Like
Yeah.
I was like,
You did
Bangladesh, what
it.
is that?
Yeah.
And I totally forgot about it until I met him, and I
Well,
was like, well, and not until I met him, until we got married, and then I was like, you know. So I literally believed in that moment as a child, and this is another thing I believe. I believe that children have very pure hearts, right?
mhm.
And
Yeah.
they and I think that at that moment in time, with the amount of belief I had in my heart, I created that I would marry someone from Bangladesh, and I did.
Right.
And I didn't even know all the things that that meant.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it didn't mean that I had to become Muslim because those two things were mutually exclusive. That's a whole
Yeah.
different podcast episode.
Right.
But I did. My choice to become Muslim had more to do with me becoming a mother than it had to
Yeah.
do with who
Yeah.
I married. Yeah, who happened to
Yeah.
be Muslim. So, yeah,
Yeah. So to the second point, the motherhood piece, for myself, find that my motherhood journey, I definitely started my inner work journey pre-motherhood, but um, it becoming a mother made it exponentially more important in my life, right? Because not only am I doing my inner work, when you have young children, you're actually doing theirs too, right? Because our voice becomes their inner voice. Or we mesh together in that way. And so I'm interested, yeah, in how your becoming a mother, right, changed your inner work journey.
yeah. So, in the beginning, like with my first child, it was more about being very present and communicative with her, right?
Yeah.
So slowing down, right? And I found that it was a challenge for me to slow down. It was like, oh my God. I remember like one
Yes,
day,
yes.
oh my God, right? So I'm like 28. She's like 3 months old. And I think I was doing something simple. It wasn't like going to work or anything. It was like going to the
Yeah.
grocery store or something. And I was like, well, let me feed her first. Let me change her diaper. Let me make sure this. And I had, with the first child, you have the perfect
Oh yeah,
diaper bag and all the
organized.
things.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Heather, like I had gotten everything in order and I was like, okay. So I fed her, let me burp her, and she spit up on my clothes. And I was like, okay, change my
Mhm.
clothes,
Yeah. Yeah.
changed her clothes. And then she had a blowout, right?
Yeah.
If for
Right.
those of you who don't know what that is, that's like the
The poop
the
comes out of the
biggest
diaper.
PM ever. So like changing clothes, changing diapers again, and
Yeah.
bath
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I just it was, like I didn't have anywhere to go really. And
Mhm.
I just remember kind of my eyes found the clock and I was like, "Oh my God. 30 minutes and I'm still here. Am I ever going to get out of the house today?" And I was like, "Cordelia, you can't like freak out like this. This is
Uh-huh.
your life.
Yeah.
You don't have anything else to do."
Yeah.
And so going to the grocery store, we know it's just going to be a little bit more of an endeavor,
Yeah.
right? So it was like having that different conversation. And
Mhm.
then fast forward to after her brother was born,
Mhm.
2 years later, boys are different from girls. Like girls, they're very strong-willed, but in
Mhm.
like the most natural, I think, kind of neutral way. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, isn't that the way we're supposed to be?
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah, yeah,
require
yeah, yeah. Yes.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boys are more like, I'm on this planet. Why? Like that's the,
That's your
you know, and he was just always like looking at me and then he would just scream. And I was like, look, let's talk about this. You're in a body now, and it's like, I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
it sounds weird to people listening, but I just felt that he was a lot more not wanting to be in his body yet. That's the
Mhm.
only, and I know like the average mom was like, oh my God, this child is so needy and screams all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that.
Mhm.
And I recognize, even for myself, that I'm a soul. What I remember
Yeah.
distinctly about the first 5 years of my life is like, why is my body so small and I feel so big? Because I felt
Mhm.
like I had these big feet, right? Because I
Uh-huh.
know that we're souls. So the feeling just intuitively I got from my son was like, I don't want to be in this body. Why am I
Mhm.
here? Why is
Yeah.
everything so loud and bright?
Mhm.
So I this is what really pulled me into my spirituality. And so I was
Mhm.
looking for answers because I was a new Muslim, right? In
Mhm.
Islam. And so there are different prayers that you can say
Mhm.
um, that are supposed to calm down the nervous system.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so
Yeah.
in the way we recite Quran is like in this rhythmic form that's called tajweed. And so there's a healing chapter out of the Quran called Surah Fatiha. And I would just recite this over and over again to him.
Yeah.
And it would just calm him down. And
Mhm.
I just made a whole thing about it, right? So like
Yeah.
I had to rock him a certain way, so that became my workout. And then I would recite these surahs, so I would be practicing my Arabic. And then,
Yeah.
if his sister was nearby, then she was learning with me. And I just made like it to be a whole like transformation for all three of us.
Yes.
So it just and that's the way I continues now, older than the babies. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I also recognized that I required to nurture myself, so to have to have more available for them, I had to do something and create openings within myself. And so I don't know if you do this, Heather, but back then at least, one day when I was in the bathroom, I was like, what can I do in this moment
Yeah.
to pour into myself?
Yeah.
You know? Because
Yeah.
let's face it, that sounds so beautiful and so cute, right? And for any mom that has kids under 5 right now is listening to me and like, she's a saint because like I'd be going crazy and I need to clean my house and when am I going to cook dinner?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right,
So
right.
all that was present for me as well. So that day in the bathroom, I realized that, okay, every time I come to the bathroom, I'm going to clean a part of this room. And so throughout my day, throughout the house, I would create small pockets of sanctuary.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and so I talk about this in my first book,
Yeah.
Work Out Around My Day,
Yeah.
because that's what the whole concept is, right? It was,
Yeah.
I would work in things to nurture myself throughout my day and get my, domestic duties done and mother my kids, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's you mentioned presence when when your daughter was born. And I want to come back to that, but what you just spoke of was uh finding a way to stay present with yourself, right? Through life getting really full, because that's what happens with small children. Like you said, there's no like organized, like we're going to feed and this and this, and then we're going to go to the store and come back, like you do if you're just by yourself, you know? So there's this surrendering to what is,
yep,
right? And if you do the surrendering without keeping present to yourself, then you turn yourself completely over to the situation,
yep,
right? And that the surrendering is so essential, or else you're just fighting with your situation the whole time and
yep,
resisting it and getting all worked up, right? But if you just surrender and don't have presence with yourself, that's self-abandonment, right? And so that is this is why motherhood is such a potent experience, right? Of the dichotomy of life that can keep us in flow, like the dichotomy of the skills that we need access to, right? Or the ways of being that we need access um, to keep flow in our lives, right? And to keep so coming back to the presence and love, I find and I love the way you described it, like with your daughter, right? It's like slowing down and like being present with this being. And I um have missing the experience of having a baby. Like for the past, dozen years, I've always had another baby. And now we're like, I think we're not going to have another baby. And I'm like, oh, but that was a source of like importance for me, not like self-importance, but like a source um of fulfillment, because when I was pregnant and when I have a small child, you're sure, you just know it, you feel in your body like this is an incredibly important thing right here, right?
yeah,
Worth stopping everything else and just being present with it. You
yeah,
just are sure about it, you know? And when you do that and you experience it, there's a fulfillment that that happens, right? Like a
yeah,
satisfaction, the potency of life that we crave, you know? And so I love how you spoke about, we this learning that it requires, right? I have to expand to be able to surrender and be more present and at the same time stay present with me and not abandon myself, right? And
yeah,
what calls us to that though is this instinctual feeling of this is the most important thing right here. I'm not worried about 100 million other things out there. When my baby is crying, I'm right here, you know?
yeah. I mean, I would say like what I've come to know is that the surrender, the work is the surrender,
Mhm.
and the transformation that motherhood requires is is part of that work,
Yeah, yeah.
and some people get it pretty easily, but other people need to have 6 kids. So
Maybe that's why people keep having babies. I want more
people,
practice.
I know people, but I know what you're saying because I totally loved the part of being pregnant, even like to the point of like calling in the soul. It's like, you know,
Mm,
I want, to create a being,
yeah.
and having to be in a certain heart set for that creation
Yes.
to happen, you know?
Yes.
And almost as if you have that communication through between the worlds, and
Yeah.
so four of my kids I had at home, so
Mhm.
I really embodied that whole, like, calling in the soul and then having that conversation, that, not conversation, right, but
Right. Not with words. Yeah.
the communication.
The
um
presence with it, really,
yeah,
right?
the presence with it. And
Yeah.
I just really got present with the last three, like, that last trimester. You're like uncomfortable, and I was like, well, wait, let me slow down with this. What's happening? I seem to wake up at the same times, eat the same stuff, and
Yeah.
I can only sleep on this side, or I can only do this
Mm.
exercise. You know what I mean? And so when I documented that stuff, I can look at those kids now that are like over 10 years old and be like, I remember when you were inside, you used to do that, like you haven't
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
changed
They're the
much.
same. Yes.
So bringing that, into translation for people who have not been pregnant or had kids, or not even women,
Yeah.
you know, um, just this is something that is accessible to you as well,
Yeah.
because you do have a soul carrying around a body. We got it twisted. We think that we're souls in a body,
Right.
but the
Right.
soul is bigger than the body.
Yes.
So if you slow yourself down enough and presence yourself to, I seem to get a headache when
Hmm.
I, behave this way and I really want to do this, right?
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
incongruence,
Yeah.
or my body hurts when I eat this or drink this instead of, and those things, they can be misconstrued as taking better care of your body. And the real truth is, when you take good care of your body, you're taking good care of your soul.
Right. And the motherhood piece I found has pulled me back into that connection, right? When I'm pregnant or when I'm nursing, or even just in a caretaking relationship, with my right now 5-year-old. It's interesting. I realized not getting pregnant again, that always called me back into like nutrition minded. I was when they're so little, I just get so focused on them, right? And then when they get a little older, I start, ooh, yes, I want to remember, I want to feed myself, the things that I love. Um, and I always, the last, dozen years, it was always in service to this thing growing inside me, right? It felt like for
Yep.
both of us,
Yep.
and so now I'm practiced at being called back into the experience of my body and noticing it and nurturing it, but now I'm doing it just
Right.
for me, right?
In
And I'm like,
service to
oh, what a
you.
gift. Yes, my children taught me that. Incredible. Well,
Yeah.
as you were speaking, I was reminded of a conversation I had with Sam this week, and I think it would be really awesome to hear your perspective. We were talking about uh, transformation experiences, like awakening experiences, and there's always this feeling of letting go. Like if you
Hmm.
listen, Sam has listened to a bunch lately, and he tells me all, about the podcast he listened to, and he's interested in that experience of like when you feel like you've had an awakening or some kind of spiritual transformation. Like what does that even mean? And he found this common thread that there's always like a letting go in there,
Mm.
right? You think you're going to acquire something, but it's a letting go. And it when he shared one with me and I listened to it, it reminded me exactly. The man is describing his spiritual, awakening kind of uh process, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's describing transition, like giving birth." And when you're super pregnant and you're gone into labor and you've been laboring for a while and you're like, "This can't get any worse." Like
Yep.
if this gets any worse, I quit. And then it gets a little bit worse and you're like, "No, I quit. I can't do it. I can't do it." And it's usually between like 7 and 10 centimeters dilated, and it's called transition, and it's when you say, "I can't do this." Like I want to stop.
Yep.
And for me, like when I was giving birth at home, I was like, take me to the hospital, like knock me out. you know? And they're like,
Right.
get in the tub.
Yeah, they're
And
like,
that's
too
what,
late.
yeah, like, oh, here comes the baby. So it's get in the tub, but at that moment, in order to birth the baby, and when it's with your body and it's physical, it's just happening, kind of to you, So, but there's this moment where you say, everyone talks about the I can't do it moment, but the moment after that is the surrender when you're like, whatever happens, happens, and that's when you let go. And all of a sudden, it actually gets easier because it's time to push, right? And you're in this new phase. And between pushes, you actually get this high of oxytocin, this blissful rest, right? Which you didn't have access to a few minutes ago,
Hmm.
right? But to get there, to get to this really productive, actual pushing a baby out experience, you had to have the I can't do it anymore
Hmm.
feeling, which brought you to the, okay, I'm just here, whatever happens, happens.
Hmm.
And I never realized or never connected that experience to like a spiritual awakening, and
Hmm.
how, anybody can have that. Like that's just the process of creating what's next, you know?
I always related it to a spiritual experience because for me, I literally felt like I was leaping between the worlds
Mm-hmm.
as my baby was coming out. And as you were sharing that, like my last pregnancy in particular, I remember like my water broke right before midnight. And I told my midwife, I'm like, I can't do this, you
Yeah, I'm
know?
done.
And this was
Uh-huh.
the first time and the longest time I ever went, so it was about 20 minutes. And this time I actually had hired a doula as well.
Yeah.
And so I was just like looking down, and I remember I'm just like, I know the baby has to come out
Right. This is
because I'm
happening.
like all the way here. And my midwife was like, you're in the power spot, Cordelia. You've done this before because it was literally in the same spot I had my last child. And so my doula came in and she created these beautiful oils. And this was, I can't remember, but it smelled so beautiful. And she says, how you doing, mama? And I was like, I was almost going to give up. I was like thinking I can't do this. And she was like, you got this. And this oil, as she was saying, she just rubbed my back
Mm-hmm.
with this oil. And then I always felt I feel that conversation between me and the child, and I felt her stir. And I was like, okay, are we ready now? Is it time? And
Yeah.
so then I told my midwife, I said, you're going to have to come and catch her. She's ready, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was just so easy. So that was like, I know, and I'm going to tie something else in here. I know everyone says that no one's coming to save you, but I want you to think about this for a minute. It's
Mhm.
not that it's my doula did not come to save me. She came to check on me.
Yeah.
She came to, what
Be
is the
with
function of a
you.
doula? She came
Yeah.
to be with me
Yeah.
in my transition
Mhm.
so that my flow of surrender was easier. And that
Yeah.
is the function of a coach.
Yes. Yes.
And I hired a doula, right? So it's an
Yeah.
investment.
Yeah.
So if you're in a place where you're feeling like you want to transition, but it's too hard, it's too
Mhm.
much. It's like you don't need a savior.
Yes.
And at the
Right.
same time, there's something that someone else has that can help you to unlock what's happening within you, within
Yeah.
your own soul.
Yeah.
And so for me in that moment, when I was like, I wasn't going to give up because you
Sure.
can't when you got
You
a baby
can't.
coming out.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Even if you don't have a
Mhm.
baby coming out, whatever your purpose is, whatever it is you're doing in the world, you don't want to give up.
Yes.
And you really can't give up. That's the truth.
Yeah. Don't you think the journey, like the hero's journey, I love to think about the hero's journey. I just read a book about it recently, or the heroine's journey. and it's the mentor shows up at this transition, which is exactly what we're talking about, from coping with life and doing the shoulds
Yep.
to surrendering to your
Yep.
calling,
Yep.
right? And that, why would we do that alone, right? Like the complete if you're, what you're doing is you're letting go of your identity,
Yeah.
right? Your old identity. You've and there's this idea that um as we come into adulthood, we're in the world that our parents created for us, and we're kind of coping with it, right? Coping, which actually makes us pretty strong. You know,
Yeah.
that's like, it's useful. It's not bad. It's like the journey,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
makes us really strong and
Right.
wise and capable, right? But you get to this point where it's time to get on your own journey. And it's
Yeah.
so painful to keep coping, like when you're in labor, right? Like, I give up. Like,
It's, yeah, at that point
it's
you
supposed to
recognize,
feel that way,
yeah, it's
right?
not about the coping. Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
the falling into your new
Letting the life,
responsibility. Yeah.
letting the life flow through you, right? Getting in your own, creating your own reality in your own world, co-creating that with the universe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in the heroine's journey, a mentor, that's when the mentor shows up, right?
Yeah.
Because we are social creatures and we do need connection,
Yeah.
right? To be able to let go of, and it's a temporary relationship, but that's the presence you need to be with, you hold it with somebody else while you let go of your identity of and your coping, right? And then that is when you're able, because you have this presence of someone else, you are able to let go. And I kind of, it's like stepping onto an escalator, right? It's like, it's
Yeah.
going, I'll
Yeah.
step on, I don't even know where it's going,
I would
right? Or
even
like,
say it's like a double entendre with presence, right? Because you
yeah,
have the presence of someone holding space for you while you're busy being present in the present
yes,
moment. You
yes,
know?
yes. It's And it's that feeling of, um, 1 plus 1 equaling 3,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when you're in that potency of, I can't do this anymore, right? Or I won't do this anymore, right? Which is even more powerful, right? I won't do this anymore. You have the potency to join with someone else and create something even larger, right? Than yourself. Like, that's I think we, you know, um, forget that it's a service to the world, right? Not just ourselves. It's not just getting through. For me, it's a service to the world
You see
to
this
go through
behind
that
me?
process. Yeah.
These are seeds.
Mm,
So you're serving yourself
yeah.
for all this to come out into
Yes.
the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The highest service of a person to the collective is to work on themselves. And the highest service of the collective is to enable us to be our greatest selves, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I love the togetherness of that moment where the mentor and the mentee come together, right? It's like the joining of the collective and the individual, right? Because the
Yeah.
mentor brings all of their wisdom from their journey and how the collective has supported them, right? And
Yeah.
that's the thresholder role,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
that's the threshold, and you need a thresholder. You just do. And then off you go. And what what have the gifts, like when you have been coached, right? What are the gifts that you've received, right? Like, what has your experience been having a coach?
You know, I would say just just mostly
Just.
accessing parts of me, yeah, um, that I had forgotten were available to me.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that you say forgotten, because I say that when I'm coaching, all I'm doing is reminding. Like, I don't know anything you don't know, right?
Right, right.
But I might remind you of what you've forgotten,
Yeah.
you know? So that's
Just
exactly,
like the like my doula when she came, right?
yeah.
Like this was my sixth child, you
Yeah, she doesn't
understand?
know anything you don't know, right? About birth.
It's
Yeah.
not like I haven't pushed out a kid before, you know?
Yes.
Like um it was just remembering that and believing that I can do this and I can do this well, in
Yes.
communication with this person, my baby,
Yeah. Doing it well. Um, for what that brings up for me is um having the experience of being fully supported through it, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
That's the so it's not like doing it well, meaning that I
Not
have
as
to
a
check off
judgment.
certain boxes, right?
Yeah.
And be a perfectionist, which that's like, in the coping realm, right? We're like, oh, we got to be perfect at this, we got to do it well. But when are joining in with the force of the collective that's showing up in your life, um, doing it well means, you know, experiencing it's both. It's like experiencing the support of the universe, right? Or the resources you have around you, right? So that you can also be a support to the world
Yeah.
around you. That's what doing it well is, right?
Yes. Yes. And and without judgment. I have to like say that
Yeah,
again.
back to that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Without judgment, as an observer, you know. Um and everything's an experiment, you know, being really excited and curious about it. That's what keeps everything joyful. Everything can be a joyful moment, you know?
Yes.
I
Isn't
mean,
that
I remember, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I remember like I had a joyful moment when it hit me that I couldn't stay married to my husband. Like we were making
Mhm.
coffee one morning and he came down and he was just like not really, he was not having a good day. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, you know, we don't have to do this. We
Yeah.
can like not be together. And he was like, no, we have to be together because we're married. I'm like, but it can stop.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I was smiling because it was almost as if I never realized that before.
Yeah, right.
I was like,
Right. Right.
if I get to a point where I'm so grumpy in the morning that I just can't stand the sight of the first person I see who happens to be my wife or my spouse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then why would I keep doing that?
Hmm.
And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's just not do it anymore.
Yeah.
And just the calm that came over me when I realized that and the joy in my heart, I was like, yeah, this can end and it's all right.
And isn't that the main transition? And maybe it's unimaginable for people who haven't gone through a major threshold like we're talking about. When you're in the coping arena, there's a right way to do it,
Yes. And all the things, you got to do
right?
this,
So
you got to
that's
do
where the
that.
judgment comes.
Yeah.
Is like, this is the right way to do it, and this is the wrong way to do it. So we spend all our time judging and judging and judging and judging, and we think that's going to get us closer to doing it the right way, and then we'll have fulfillment or whatever it is that we're searching for. But that's that's actually the process of getting to the threshold where you surrender and realize,
Yeah.
oh, nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just here hanging out, derping around
Yeah.
for a while, right? There's no
Yeah.
right way to do it, and the process of dropping that identity, right, actually is what for me helped me feel belonging with the human race, right? It's
Right.
actually really comfortable. Oh, hey, you don't know what to do either. Cool. Like,
Like,
that's great.
hey, we just all lost. It's all right,
That's
you
where the
know.
ease is, though. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
Yeah. In savoring like you know, the uncertainty.
Yeah. And is it uncertainty? If you don't know
Right.
what you're doing in the first place and you forgot who you are, then what's certain?
Right. What was right? Was there even certainty to begin with? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's like an illusion, right? The illusion of certainty. So, we've talked about a lot of things. What would you say in your life has been the wisdom or the learning that has impacted you the most, or something, that has majorly impacted you?
Well, I would say, you know, when I realized that my thoughts could be
Mhm.
seeds to my growth or bars
Mm.
to my prison.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how you
Yeah.
have both, because I think a lot of people wake up to, oh, my thoughts are things, right? Like Steve says, and I don't have to believe them. But that's only the first half. You don't have to believe your thoughts. That's true. That's a major awakening to have, right? To be able to be the witness of them. But the second half is that you can actually create thoughts, like you said, that are the seed to be for you to be whatever you want to be,
Yeah.
right? So when you start to choose your thoughts and then notice how those affect you, because we all have habitual thoughts, right? Left over from the coping game that we played, or that maybe we're still playing in lots of ways, right? And they come up, and our body's trying hard to supply us with what it thinks we need to survive, right? But these thoughts come up, and we don't have to believe them. We can, when we do believe them, we can notice how our body responds, and that's like the healing journey, right? But the journey of creation is when we say, ooh, that means I can put a thought in my head, right?
Yeah.
And do the inner work.
Yeah.
You have to do the inner work to get it in all the nooks and crannies of your body, for sure. Just saying the thing,
But you
doesn't.
know, Heather, not to overcomplicate it, for people, because it's
Yeah.
like when we say do the inner work, I don't want to make that like a distant reality for people. It's just, it's
Uh-huh.
pretty simple. Like in this moment, thought comes in, this can be a seed to my growth, period. Right? I
Yeah.
can make it mean something or not,
Mhm.
and I can create something with it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so just be the awareness of the choice,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we don't have to make it anything huge. It's just like I have a choice with this thought. I
Yeah.
what do I want to create with this thought? Oh, I don't see anything to create, just throw it away. Oh, I see
Right.
something to create and I'm using that, you know? Simply. Yeah.
Simply, and um making it like an ordinary part of your life,
Yep.
right? That's what I feel like
Every
you just
single
brought us back
interaction.
to, is
Yep.
like it doesn't have to be formal, right? And
Yeah.
the goal is for, sometimes it starts out formal. So you're working with a coach and they're like, try this, think of it this way. But bringing it just into your ordinary daily experience,
Being. Yeah.
being, that's what creates being. Yeah. 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 How has focusing on your being changed your experience of life?
I think it's the other way around. I never realized that my intention was to focus on my
Mm.
being, right? So with
Uh-huh.
when I talk about realizing I needed to be present and to self nurture, I was always working towards nurturing my being. And I was
Yeah.
always, so now that I'm aware that that's what I require,
Yeah.
um, I I enjoy my dips and valleys and I don't allow it to, you know, push me towards self-destruct or despair like it used to. Like I used to be like, "Oh, this is happening right now. Oh my God, woe is me." And now I'm kind of like in observance of that. I'm like, "Okay, this is
Mhm.
happening. I'm in this moment. I don't really have an opinion, don't really like it, doesn't
Yeah.
feel good." And I'm pretty sure by the end of the day, there's a benefit to this moment, you know?
Hmm.
And I just be with that and keep going into the next moment and the
Yes.
next thing. Because the other side of being a mother of lots of kids and running a business is that there's a whole lot of moments like that in the day. So in the day, you can like easily go up to Mount Kilimanjaro and down to the lowest valley in the
Yes.
ocean and the deepest ocean, and and back up again in snow-topped mountains,
Yeah.
and you just can't allow. For me, what that means is I require a certain level of nurturing, and that means staying in how to nurture myself in the moment,
Yeah.
and decide. Decide, is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah. Sometimes it is decide, right? Because I have to
Mm.
kill off something.
Yeah.
Decide whether this is something I need to make mean something or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
um, and and getting to a point of discernment of um, if anything ever needs to mean anything.
Sam has a joke. We have a joke where something comes up and we can feel ourselves get it, the upsets in our bodies, and um and it's so immediate now when we do this. Like something happens and we're like, and Sam will say, must mean something. And it's this joke of like, it doesn't have to,
Right.
right? We can
Exactly.
just like let it go. Whether we snap at each other, all the things like you said that happen in a day, right? We can make it mean something and tell
Or
that
not.
story for the rest of the day or the rest of our lives,
Yep.
or we can let it mean nothing,
Yeah.
right? And then it will be forgotten, you know, at the next beat, and we can go on. And what a beautiful ha- that's a beautiful practice to have access to,
Yeah.
you know. That's really that's we forget, I think, that creating doesn't always mean creating something tangible. Like it can also mean creating nothing,
That is
right?
tangible though. I mean, like I know we live in a 3D world, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the way you feel is tangible
Mm-hmm.
because that
Yeah,
creates matter, right?
yeah,
Because it's that cycle. So, it's all about, for me, replenishing me,
yeah, yeah.
and nurturing me. And that's something it's accessible to everybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and when this brings us back to it brought me back in my mind to being in service again, right? I replenish myself. I stay in practices, right, of presence with myself, and right and what you were describing about putting things throughout your day, those are like rituals, right, where it may be silly, like sometimes I'll just like rub my feet when I sit on the couch, right, and it's just like I'm here, I'm doing 100 things, I'm reading kids books, but if I put my hand on my foot and rub my foot, it's like, Heather, I'm here with you too,
Yeah.
you know or
Yeah,
it's
I
like I
love
have a tight
that.
hip, I'll like rub my hip, like here I am, and it's just enough to come back. But that's what allows me to be back into service. It improves my quality of life. Absolutely. And I love that it allows me to enjoy being in service to my children, to the world, to joy mongering. Right?
Yes.
Well, what last question of the day? I'm interested in what keeps you coming back to coaching others, right? We talked about being coached, and then we talked a lot about self-coaching, which is basically what the self-tending is, right?
Yeah.
Leadership within yourself. Um, but when you coach others, what is that experience like for you? Why do you love it?
I love witnessing people
Hmm.
and being a conduit for transformation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a joy.
It's a right? No, being a thresholder, it for sure provides access to the potency of life, and it renews um a love for living for me, because I mean, it sure is easy to get bogged down in all the things that are happening and all the hard stuff, right? But when we can be committed to being present with the transformation that's possible, right? Then we can bring that into all the moments in our own day. And yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for such amazing conversation. It always goes that way with us, right?
I love talking to you, Heather. You're the best. This is really great, and I hope for, your audience, viewers and listeners that it has been transformative, and they got one thing that they could pull into their world today,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
move
Yes.
themselves a little bit closer to what they choose to create.
Right. Yeah, we can end with a reminder that we all have the power, right? To take whatever's in front of us, right? And
Mm,
create something amazing with it. And
yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much, Cordelia.
Thank you, Heather.
Mhm.